Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's quickly get down to business. Adewole Adebayo, SDP presidential candidate and a lawyer. The Prince also joins us on our discuss today. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mechi. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And God bless Nigeria.
Yeah. It could have been you addressing the nation in a media chat, just like President Bola Tinubu did.
Yeah, though I wouldn't have done it the way it's being done now. I would have done it in a way where you can actually ask real question. You stay in the State House, and you go to the days and stand there, and everyone who is part of the State House correspondent crew should be able to pose questions, and it should be more regular. It should not be done just during ceremonies. Like I said, one of your shows here, that the president is not a ceremonial masquerade that should come out only on Christmas and some calendar days. It should be a regular thing in the State House. And
this media chat was on the eve of Christmas.
Yes, so I think I was expecting the president to dress in Christmas colors, you know.
But you are not dressing Christmas.
Because I'm here always regularly briefing the people.
Okay, he raised very pertinent issues. In fact, his performance there, many people are saying, at least we know that he's the originator and the driver of these pro-capitalist policies he has introduced, withdrawal of subsidies, increased taxes, floating of the currencies, allowing, in quote, market forces to drive the economy and determine price based on his performance. Not some people whispering to him. Did you get that vibe from the president?
I got a slightly different vibe. First, I know that he is aware. So he is far better than President Buhari in that respect. He cannot say I'm not aware, which used to be the mantra. So he's aware of these policies. Therefore, he cannot come back later to disown them when the manifest effects start to come out. I don't mind a president who is pro-capitalist, because that is one perspective to economic development. But what they are doing, just neoliberal, is not really necessarily pro-capitalist, because the free market, they are the free market themselves. So the market is actually not free.
The unseen hands are seen.
Yes, and they are also not putting rules of general application in the market to govern. They are tinkering with the markets. You know, as an economist yourself, that you could see the finger of the central bank in the last 2 weeks in the foreign exchange market. So
the automated system they introduced.
Yeah, but they are the one
that shot up the value of the Naira momentarily.
Yeah, but who's the dominant supplier there? Because if the dominant supplier is from the market, then I'll be happy. But if the dominant supplier is also the regulator, I know that the regulator has a target figure in mind and is trying to get there maybe for at the end of the year or around the time they're doing their budget. So what is clear is that the thing you need to do for economic growth, they're not being done. So you are playing a game of numbers. That's basically what they're doing now. Because when I look at the budget, I look at the elementary parameters that they set. Those parameters are self-contradictory. There's a quarrel between the words and the numbers. And you know...
What do you mean by that?
Okay, when you say it's a budget of renewed hope, and you don't have any hope with employment, when your 15% target for inflation is not hopeful enough, you are an economist, you know that a double-digit inflation is already a failure. Nobody needs to tell you. If someone is brought to your hospital and they are bleeding, no doctor asks, what is wrong with this person? They just go and stop the bleeding, because they know every doctor agrees. All doctors in the world agree that bleeding, hemorrhage, is bad. So if someone is brought to your hospital with extremely high temperature, doctors don't ask, what is wrong with this person? Because all doctors agree that extremely high temperature is not good for the body. So they immediately want to address those immediate emergencies. So when you have an economy in which the chief doctor of the economy, the finance minister, says to the Nigerian population, I am going to give you 15% inflation. You already tell the people, I'm going to make you poor. I'm going to create unemployment. And I'm
That's halving the figures, more than half the figures.
There is
current figure.
There's an operating figure for inflation. You must go below double digit before you can have any healthy economy. So it is not an achievement that you have it or you break into 1/3 or 2. No, there is a figure. So that's why I use the medical emergency situation. There is a temperature that is good for human body, for good health. Reducing the temperature from 68 to 45, the person is still not healthy, the person might still break down and die. So you need to target a single digit inflation. Remember that what they are doing is not even in any way making an attempt to improve on what they made, because they were the one who shot the inflation rate to 34.6, which is 35, 36, and can go as far as 41 if you put food inflation in it. So they are the one responsible. So to take it back to 15, which is a Herculean task, given the parameters that they set and the target that they set. So when you look at all of this, I have come to the conclusion that this is not a good way to run an economy, especially a mid-term budget for them, because they only have one more shot after this one before they have the terminal one.
Mid-term is always the best time to run a budget. But on the issue of inflation, I'm aware that the National Bureau of Statistics will be changing, that in the process, the base year for the calculation of inflation. Instead of using some years back, they'll bring it forward, and once the new figures comes out, I see a drastic reduction. Perhaps that's what the chief economic advisor was looking at when he was predicting 15% inflation rate in 2025.
You see, there's no returning officer for econometrics. Everybody who is in the market will get his own data. Even the women who go to the market to buy chicken, they're getting their own data. So it's not like an election where INEC is the only returning officer, and whatever they announce, the returning can do about it. In economics, when I go to the bank to transact in money, and the money is being priced, I will get some feedback. So now, if they want to go and read the figures, like adjust the base year, and if you do it...
They say adjusting the base year is a fundamental periodical things that even other countries of the world do.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying to you is that you watch trends. All those routine changes. For example, you may as well recalculate your population, for example. Say I recalculate my population is a normal thing to do, and you base your population, and you reduce your population number or do whatever. Whatever adjustment you make will not change the reality on the ground. And why don't we learn to do a budget of reality? Not a budget that has certain aspirational thing that you cannot meet. Do a budget of reality. Look at where employment
Rather
is.
than an ambitious one?
No, because first, from your ambition and the methodologies you adopt, I can see contradiction. So I'm not going to follow your ambition. I'm going to look at, first, what can this budget, the way it is written, achieve? Forget about what the government is saying it will achieve. Look at it like an economist, an econometrist, look at it and say, what are the fundamentals that is going to change? Will it change the price of factors of production? If it's going to change the prices of factors of production, then I know that it will facilitate production. Will it change the pricing of labor using the Phillips curve, for example? Will it change it? It won't change it for the better because of the inelasticity of our wage pricing in Nigeria. Our wages are essentially fixed by government. So there's no perfect market for wages. So you cannot say, I work as a geologist for the government. If somebody pays me better, I'm going to go there. There's no elasticity of such. Then I look at, will it change the employment number? So if it doesn't change the employment number, getting more people employed, then I wonder, what is it going to change? does it change the infrastructural environment? This budget, how does it do in infrastructure? This budget is essentially to pay debt. So that's why I say it will not fundamentally change anything. And then when I look at the overall ballpark figure, I ask myself, there's a problem of illusion of money. Illusion of money can fool the people, but when the illusion of money is fooling the owner of the budget, the government itself, then I get worried because they are $5 billion underwater year on year because $33 billion worth last year.
That's the value of the budget in dollar terms.
Yes, because they are spending in dollars from what I see, and they are earning in dollars as well. So if you look at it, they are now trading around 28 billion. So you are already from day one, 5 billion underwater, which means their vaunting ability, their vaunting credential as better collectors is actually just taking advantage of inflation and exchange rate differential. They are not collecting more money now in real terms than before. Then if you look at the borrowings that they are doing, they have managed the ways and means better.
And the president made reference to it.
Yes, they manage it better. I don't know if they're hiding it, but I want to believe the president. I like to give credence to whoever is in public office that they mean well for the country. And any error they make is just genuine error or incompetence.
No more human error.
Yes. So I believe that they manage the ways and means better. But I'm seeing the behavior of the central bank. If they are hiding the ways and means for them, because I want to see how they are doing with treasury bills. But another thing I found immediately, which I believe you have seen, is that they are getting more active in the international bond market. Well, so if it means
the euro bonds and
yeah, so what it means is to give the breathing space to the central bank, whose papers are always catching fire now already, that okay, let us go overseas and borrow money, and let's leave the central bank alone for now, because the central bank in the past, remember at the end of Buhari's administration, the central bank gave them 37 trillion.
Or they said 23 at some point.
No, because if you look at how much they went to the National Assembly to try to ratify. Remember that at the end, towards the transition period, they went to the National Assembly and one hush-hush proceeding.
And got some other
yeah, so because what they did was they spent the money unlawfully, illegally, unconstitutionally.
And there's no account.
No account. That money disappeared. And that money went into some quantitative easing. That's why you have all this money of many colors flying around in the country. And a lot of that money was also used to purchase foreign exchange, which disappeared into the abyss. So long and short of what I'm saying is that fundamentally, I know what a good budget is. I know what to look out for. The hallmark of a budget is its ability to get people to be more productive and to remove misery. And when the president spoke last night, he spoke the way I thought he would speak. He spoke as an accountant. He was more interested in financial break. So he was more interested in balancing the books. But economics does not work that way, because what you need to do is to get your people to be productive. So at the end of the day, President Tinubu is an accountant. He is trying to balance his book. On that basis, he hasn't succeeded because he still ran deficit.
A deficit of 13 trillion?
Yes.
And which will put further pressure on total national debt and all that?
It will put pressure on national debt. It will put pressure also, I suppose, in the end, that the central bank will want to intervene on their behalf. So it will put pressure also on the value of the Naira. It will also put pressure on the availability of Naira in the economy, which will put pressure on inflation.
So if, assuming the recourse to foreign borrowing did not meet up or satisfy this 13 trillion, they have to look elsewhere, and that's the local market and ways and means again.
What I see is that they appear to be a bride on the international scene now. Nigeria will always be a bride because Nigeria is, is performing below its potential. So you know that there's wealth in Nigeria. So most lenders will come to Nigeria to give money.
Are you certain of this?
You could see how they performed when they went to London for the bond market. They were massively oversubscribed.
The Chinese are pulling back on promises for loan for critical infrastructure with fears that repayment may post.
No, anybody who's talking about repayment in Nigeria is not a problem. Repayment will not be a problem for Nigerian government. Nigerian government will be solvent. They will be able to pay. We don't have a Zambia or Argentine situation. No. What may be at stake is the welfare of the people. But ability of Nigeria to meet its debt, that's not an issue. If Nigeria just increases its collection by 5 basis points, they will be able to pay the debt.
That collection of taxes?
Exactly, because Nigeria is collecting around 15% of GDP now. The GDP itself is too small, but you can imagine 15% of GDP being collected. So if they just inch up a bit, let's say they have 25% better collection, or even better accountability if they don't even collect more, if it's just better accountability for what they collect.
That is it.
Yes,
we know we raised this issue before.
Yes.
Accountability on funds collected. Because if you expand the tax base, which of course, that's what the government is planning with, plans to increase VAT to 10% if the National Assembly gives the nod for next year.
I don't agree with that anyway, but I don't agree with that because leave VAT for where it is. Before you increase the collection, the rate, first make sure that first the targeted paying population, you are covering them, and there's accountability in that. In any case, VAT is not federal money. VAT is essentially state money.
Absolutely.
So the government is just coordinating and collecting a fee for that. So I don't know why they are so hung up on this VAT. What the government should try to do is that they are the one collecting all the licensing fees, all the mineral fees and levies. They should take care of that. The federal government is responsible for corporate taxation. They should create an environment where the corporate environment is good, and they should try so that the corporations can pay better taxes. They should remove many of the waivers that they've given. They should reconsider some of the concessions they've given out.
Do you know how much Nigeria will realize from waivers?
That's what I'm
saying. It runs
saying.
into billions of dollars.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Waivers.
Exactly. So, and this money that comes to the bank that ends up being used to finance politics should be brought into the books. And that was when I addressed the Charter Institute of Taxation earlier in the month at their annual conference. I made them to know that the taxman is the most honest of all public servants, and that the Chinese Mandarin, even the creme de la creme of the Chinese Mandarins, were those who were treasury officers, and that which money should be collected, and they should be made sure that the money reflects in the economy. If the money reflects, we don't have any reason to do ways and means. We don't have any reason to do borrowing. And on the other side, if you look at the procurement, if you don't govern the procurement well, and you don't get value for money for your expenditure, then the money is also just like pouring water into baskets.
Down the drain.
Yes, so that is where I thought that the media chart would dwell on. But the media chart, I think there was no attempt to kind of take the president's mind to the nitty-gritty of the economy. But I think discussion went here and there. But bottom line is that this year's budget is very weak. It's weaker than last year's budget, and that is a disappointment for me. Even as an opposition, I expected that they will learn something from last year's budget, and they're going to have a stronger budget, but they don't want to govern, from what I see, because your ability to govern is going to give you more revenue, because revenue is a governance issue, because the taxes don't come to you willy-nilly. The taxes come to you when you are in charge of the territory.
And provide services.
And you are actually in charge of territory. So where we have gold mine is being stolen. If you go there and you exercise governance, then you would get royalties there.
It beats my mind in terms of leakages and theft.
Yes,
what we lose. You talked about mineral fees and all that. So many, in billions of dollars we are losing. You talked about leakages in revenue collection, the ones even regulatory agencies are collecting. We have cause to believe that even hundreds of billions of naira are lost. And you also talked of procurement, where the nation does not get up to 30% in some instances
of the value
of funds put in. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll try to piece all this together and see how it can help the government in shoring up its revenue. Do stay with us. Court
has convicted Mefele. But how many of his properties have been seized, stripped of him?
Multitude.
Multitude. Desiani, no court has convicted him. But what? The property have been seized that are related to his name, right? But you know, for us, shaming, public shaming is, of course, a punishment. But that's a moral punishment. The law has stipulated forms of punishment when you are convicted. And to me, yes, they owe that to the society to tell us, to be transparent about the process itself, to tell us who is behind it. But what if they are not too sure? What if they are not hard, they are not bold together? Because mind you,
that's what the EFCC is saying.
If you go to town and say, this property is owned by Sam, you are on TV. You tell the public that you know or you suspect that I'm the owner. Tomorrow you come back and say, no, it's an Ekwe property. An Ekwe is going to say, oh, you are speculating, this is what fishing. In one breath you are saying this, in one breath you are saying that. So they are cautious.
They are being smart.
It's not smart. They are cautious because they have to. I agree with the public entirely. Let them make effort to try to know and fast track their effort in trying to catch the person. And if the person is already on trial, let them don't shield him. Let them make that public. But for now, I think our responsibility is to hail them to say, oh, this is what we expect of you, and you are doing the right job. But for us to now turn it look like their responsibility is to name and shame the criminals. That's not. We all know who the criminals are. We all know, of course, they have name and shame and Mefele. What has come out of it? Who that one helped from the ordinary language? Who has it helped? But the properties that have been recovered.
Thank you so much for staying with us, Prince Adewole Adebayo, a lawyer, a presidential candidate of SDP in the last presidential election, has been reviewing the state of the nation. He raises concerns about the budget, which he says is lower in value. That's the 2025 proposed budget presently before the National Assembly. That is lower in value than the current budget. And of course, he says some fundamentals there are over-ambitious, the inflation rates, government projecting 15%, but he believes except he gets down to single digits, then we are not yet out of the woods. Let's quickly get this comment from our social media handle, our X handle to be specific. Let's say who's speaking to us. The True Fella says, being eloquent in introducing a theory of pro-capitalism and envelope budget tagged renewed hope does not in any guise relate with the terrible reality of the economy by President Tinubu's government. Nigerians are languishing and lamenting the policy somersault. Is it a policy somersault here? The president has been consistent in pushing his pro-capitalist policies.
It's not a somersault because it's consistently against the people. So, but it is not a good policy. But it made the commentator talk about somersault in the sense that if you're talking of renew hope, and what is inside it is actually going to dash the hope. So he thought that was a kind of
antithesis.
Yeah, so that was why I said that the words are quarreling with the numbers. And you know, in economics, when words quarrel with numbers, numbers will always win. The problem with the economy is that the president understands finance. He's an accountant. But somebody needs to help him to understand economics. Because he's looking at the number in statistics. That, okay, if I reduce expenditure on subsidy, I reduce expenditure on foreign exchange, supporting the Naira, and then I try to collect more money, then I'm successful. Because
increased revenue.
Yes, because 20 billion to an accountant is 20 billion. At all times in accounting, 30 billion would always be bigger than 20 billion. But in economics, 100 billion may not be as big as 20 billion in economics because we use rates and basis. So if you change the exchange rate and I want to spend money in dollars, and you change the exchange rate by 5 basis points, and you increase my money by 4 basis points, that nominal increase will not meet. So economics is deeper. Economics has multiplier effects. So you need to understand multiplier effect. The president doesn't understand that
the trickle-down effect.
That the budget is supposed to be used to stimulate other decisions in the economy. Because the government wants to spend 45 trillion Naira. That is
the issue you're raising aligns with some thoughts, some school of thought that the central bank is not all about, the major functions of the central bank is not all about supervising banks and all that. It's about management, real management of the economy. That's why a lot of people believe we shouldn't send accountants to become central bank governors, that you need economists that will look at the overall impact. For instance, the fuel subsidy removal, how is it reverberating on the welfare of the people, their disposable income and all that? Does that fall in line with what you're saying?
Yeah, yes, there are two things you need to remember. One, you can send an accountant there. You can send a doctor, you can send a farmer. But when you are sitting there, don't think as an accountant. Think as an economist. So it is possible. Adewole was a lawyer and is one of the best finance ministers we ever had. So it is.
And he ran one of the best welfareist economies.
Exactly. So why do you think many countries don't want to confuse their people by not calling their bank central bank? They don't call it central bank anymore. They call it Federal Reserve or Reserve Bank of India or Reserve, because it is not a bank in the classical sense. Just like the World Bank is not a bank, it's a development agency. So
the central bank must see itself as an economic development institution.
Yes, and it performs reserve functions. In some countries, they even now take the banking regulation away from the Federal Reserve and give it to another agency so that they don't get confused.
In Nigeria, the Bankers Committee, I have a feeling that the Bankers Committee can effectively regulate, being the players.
Those are the things that we will have brought in. But what I want to get clear is that in economics, you have to think of all unintended consequences. You create, before you announce policies, you will do scenario planning. You would simulate all the unintended consequences. The way I listened to President Tinubu yesterday, he is sincerely willing to help and run the budget well, but I think he has 3 fundamental errors. One is that he has forgotten the illusion of money, that if you are spending money, is what the money can buy, not the nominal amount of the money. Second, he doesn't know, or he forgot, that anything he does has multiplier effect. And when you spend money for the highest rebound.
It could be negative, it could be positive.
Exactly. You want to have the highest positive rebound in your money. 3, you have to think of most of the obvious and apparent unintended consequences of your policies. If your policy is going to make your citizens to be queuing up and jumping fence for bags of rice, you don't do it, because you don't want to raise the prices of goods and services. You don't want to raise the prices of factors of production. You don't want to raise the cost of living.
That was why the spokesperson to former President Buhari gave explanations on his last birthday a few days ago as to why he refused to remove subsidy. He said he was more concerned about the impact on the people, especially the vulnerable.
No, I think Buhari was not aware of what he was doing. With due respect to President Buhari, somebody I respect a lot, but in his government, listen to people who were there, who served with him, he did not know most of what he was doing, because...
So some other people were pulling the strings?
Because first, if you refuse to remove subsidy, but you are throwing away our money, we didn't govern the subsidy well. So all that money you lost in the name of subsidy, that never went to subsidy, how do you explain it? Yes, it's a bad thing to remove the subsidy without taking care of the fact that you need to get people off it, and you need to make sure that the unintended consequences don't come. President Tinubu's hypothesis, which is even becoming like a theory, is that you cannot make omelette without breaking eggs. And I don't want to worry myself looking for measures that are not there. Because when he was asked, why have you not put these measures in place? He said, where are the measures? He cannot see the measures which I can see. So he believes that, well, I'm a doctor.
Those countermeasures.
I'm a doctor. I need to give you an injection. The pain will come with it. But even doctors or nurses, they study the human body and go to the places where you have the least pain That's why you haven't got any injection on your nose since you started taking medication or in your eyeballs. No, they go and give it to you where the tissue is soft and they can get the vein. So they need to understand in whatever they do now that humans' lives are at stake. The stability of the country is at stake. People need to be in the country where they can feed their family. And the tragedies that we are seeing, where people come out in large number and cause problems to good-hearted people who want to help the poor. Imagine people are in detention today, like the former Queen of Ife, who is just trying to help.
Is she still in detention?
I believe so. How can you be in detention for trying to help? The government that created the poor people, they're at home doing Christmas and holiday. And you who want to help, you are in prison for trying to help. Who created the poor people? Who raised the price of rice? Who raised the price of food and commodity to the point where people will be throwing their children across the fence so that they can be first in line for a program that will happen the next day for sharing of food? Those are the things we need to focus on. Those are the real-life implications.
And these are things the president must take a look at and keep his eyes on. Yes. Especially, as you said, this may be his last budget. That's 2025.
He has one more. He has one more. He has
before the next election.
This is the mid-year budget. Normally, if I was to draw the MTEF, I will draw my MTEF in such a way that I will put my second year and my third year together in my MTEF so that you can do the best you can do. Uninfluenced by politics, you can control the environment because 2024 budget was inherited. So 2025 and 26 are your budget. 2027 budget, you are in transition. And if you don't get elected, somebody has to finish it up. And if you remember what the speaker said while the president was still in the chamber, he said that last year's budget did not fully perform, was not fully implemented. That is his own speaker in his own party, in his own friendly National Assembly. So, and that's why they are even now trying to extend this budget to the first quarter.
End of first quarter,
yeah, so they are all coordinated. They need to sit down and get coordinated. But they need to borrow some of the parameters that we are giving to them now. The Human Mystery Index should be looked at. And the Human Development Index should be looked at.
You cannot figures and fundamentals.
You cannot financialize the entirety of the budget. No. The budget, you must have three things in mind. You must have fiscal and monetary housekeeping that is good, that is neat. They fail in that one. You must create stimulus, an incentive in the economy to allow people to invest. I don't know, you can do a survey in AIT, do your survey, and we can come back and discuss it. How many people, how many players in the economy are saying, oh, based on this year's 2025 budget, I am going to do more investment? I don't see, because they are not addressing interest rates, they are not addressing inflation to the level they want to address it. Thirdly, they need to realize that you are governing on behalf of the people. You are not a bank. The government, federal government of Nigeria is not a bank. It's not a financial institution.
Okay.
It's a human institution, and they need to take care of things like security, physical security, social security, and also, finally, remember that they are bound by Chapter 2 of the Constitution, fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, and that the budget, which clearly violates it, is a non-constitutional budget. Even the National Assembly wants to pass it, they are not supposed to pass it because it does not meet the test enshrined in Chapter 2 of the Constitution.
Okay, those economic and social rights and all that. Now, let's leave economics. We've done enough of it and go into politics. 2027 is fast approaching. The president and his camp will be indeed expectedly preparing. The opposition I don't expect them to be asleep also. But let's look at the environment. Is it one that engenders confidence that indeed credibility will be high?
I have confidence in Nigeria. Some institutions have not shown that they merit credibility, but the way their laws are written, the way the institution and instruments setting them up have been established, they should have our credibility. The way we set up our court system and the guarantees in Section 6 of the Constitution shows that we can have an independent judiciary. So if people who are there are not behaving, then we should try to change personnel. The way INEC is enshrined in the Constitution, not based on a statute of National Assembly. It's part of the Constitution, and the appointment and the control of that place, INEC, is in the Constitution. So it's built up to have credibility. Whether
it's just that, sorry, it's just that beyond these protections in the Constitution, we see them violated at will. Talk of the former Chief Justice of Nigeria.
Yes.
You saw how he was removed from office by a ruling of a tribunal. You've seen central bank governors whose tenures are almost guaranteed except the National Assembly steps in and all that. But we see how they were all swept away.
It's the choice. If I was president and I appoint you as governor of central bank, you know your rights. And you know that the job is not a do-or-die thing. So why will I wake up in the morning and try to tell you to do something contrary to what the banks have always given this illustration? Between Yakubu Gowon, luckily he's still with us, he's alive, and I congratulate him on his 90th birthday. He was having issues with the central bank governor, Clement Ison, because Ison was defending his bank, and he wanted to finance his war. So, and Awolowo was in between the two of them, and each one held their ground. And
as Minister of Finance.
As Minister of Finance. So Awolowo will have problem with the military. Part of the reason why people like Murtala Mohammed and co, who were in the war front, did not like Awolowo because he would want to defend value for money, for the spending. So the essence of all of this is that our culture has to be a culture that allows people to occupy institutions and offices, that they are ready to do it for the country, and they're not ready to die there. And if you lose your job because you're trying to protect the institution you are representing, it's not a bad thing.
So that's the difference, whether they are ready to take that option or just keep quiet, things go as normal, and you continue to be in office and continue to enjoy the perks.
No, it's a national duty. You could see toe to toe, I am criticizing whatever President Tinubu is doing wrong. It's not a personal hatred. It's the duty I owe to the country as an opposition, and to show alternatives, because some of the policies that are bringing can depress the people to think that there's no solution in Nigeria. If you are in the judiciary, you give judgment according to the law. You are not against anyone. You are just defending the institution. If you are in INEC, you do say, if you are a voter, it starts with the voter. You make sure you don't sell your vote. You vote your conscience. Whether the person you vote for wins or not, you are making your own contribution. Many of the problems we have, which has to do with talking about institutions and all of that problem, is that we have to have the character to match the institution. You can have the best aircraft. You need a good pilot. You can have the best car. You need a good driver, a good mechanic. So these institutions are well built. They can be strengthened one way or the other, but where we have lagged behind Nigeria in the recent times is that we have not had the quality of character that is required to occupy these offices.
Absolutely.
That is why, I'll give you an illustration without taking too much of your time. When Adam Oshomale, the senator, was chairman of APC, he used to counter us when President Buhari was there, that we should give President Buhari more time. He was doing his best. He could not have done better. But we kept criticizing Buhari. Now, when President Buhari left, and Oshomale became a senator, he said Buhari's government left a very bad country, a bad economy, for President Tinubu. You said that time that Buhari was okay. We should give Buhari more time. Now you say Buhari left a bad economy. So if we don't criticize President Tinubu now, many of those who say give Tinubu a chance, give him more time, when Tinubu leaves and we get there, they will tell us that Tinubu left a bad economy for us. So we must talk now why changes can be made. A budget proposal, for example, is just a proposal. And when you get feedback from opposition, get feedback from other places, even feedback from the National Assembly, they can make amendment, they can do supplementary, they can do amendment. The same thing with anything.
I understand what you're saying, but they want to be politically correct, and nobody wants to put a feet down and stand on the right thing. There are some few of them that are out there, but perhaps when we get the critical mass, we'll begin to see.
We need to talk to our people, and we need to keep it on, and that is why, that is my mission now, to keep it on, because Nigeria has the best potential you can ever think of. Everything that will make you succeed.
That keep engaging, preferring alternatives and all that.
Yes, and people must be engaged. People must not be despondent. Don't say because the price of rice is too high for me, I cannot feed my family this Christmas, why do I care about government? You need to care because next year is also coming.
Yeah, let's quickly take this tweet. It's in form of a question from Adewole Adebayo, and it says the president's response to tackling corruption was questionable. How would my guest here have tackled it if he were to be the president?
Tackling corruption, I've always said, is very simple. It's law of personal example. Law of personal example. President Tinubu came to the villa alone. He came with Chetima, those two people.
Joint ticket.
Yes. Every other person there, he brought them to government. Anybody who's in government today is in government at the pleasure, in the executive branch, at the pleasure of the president. So if there is corruption, it is his corruption. It is the signal, because you look around the country and you have to select just 50,000 out of 200 million. It shouldn't be too hard for you to find 50,000 people whom you can
of integrity.
And yes, and your personal example is enough to fight corruption. And if there's no personal example, and that's why when President was talking about we need to cut our cloth according to our size, that aircraft that I see at the airport every day when I travel is not according to his size. That aircraft,
the Airbus,
yes, is bigger than his
newly
size.
acquired.
It's bigger than his own size. Because he's the president of poor people. And president of poor people does not spend that kind of money. So he has no hangar anywhere in Nigeria where he can repair it, where he can maintain it. He doesn't produce it. His colleague in Brazil, when he went to Brazil, they produced their own aircraft. But he is buying one he cannot afford.
I saw some rehabilitation of the hangar at the presidential wing.
Yeah, they can do
perhaps to expand it to accommodate the new.
Yeah, but they are using
Airbus.
foreign exchange for all of that. They're not using indigenous technology for it. It's not something that we can go to Shobo and get the iron and put together. So what I'm letting you know is that when you tell people, live according to your size, or cut your cloth according to your size, and you yourself are in double, triple barbariga, so you are telling the people that the suffering is meant for them alone. And that also has impact on corruption. Because when a person comes to work and their transport money is higher than their salary, then you are inviting them towards corruption. And
You're setting up structures of corruption.
But you have 18 cars following you, including ambulances, everything. You have aircraft. You have bogus state house. You built another one for your vice president. Everybody is joined. National Assembly is building a new chamber without having a new attitude. So when you have all that money being spent, you don't have the moral right to go to people and tell them that you need to tighten your belt because your own tummy is getting bigger and bigger. So that is why corruption is an attitudinal thing. The law is against corruption. The attitude of Nigerians against corruption, but you have to create a condition that will make people to be able to live free of corruption. But if you need corruption to pay your rent, you need corruption to feed your family, then corruption is going to be knocking on your door more than the devil.
We'll have to leave it here. Adewole Adebayo, SDP presidential candidate in the last election. Thank you so much for coming over. And thank you for always engaging with the issues. We need, like you said, we need alternative opinion. We need alternative policies. It can only help the government in place. We can't help the government by keeping quiet and giving thumbs up to all.
This is our government.
That's
it's a
the
continuity
spirit of democracy.
Yes, and God bless Nigeria. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all Nigerians, despite the tough economy.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amici Anafue. Merry Christmas ahead and best wishes this season.